The Galactic Council Chamber was the largest structure ever built by intelligent life. It floated in the empty space between three spiral arms of the galaxy, a massive sphere of white metal and crystal that could hold 10,000 representatives from 37 different species. For 12,000 years, this place had been the center of galactic civilization. Wars had been stopped here. Trade agreements had been signed here. The future of trillions of lives had been decided in this very room. Today, the chamber was filled with fear. Ambassador Yuna of Earth sat in the back row, where humanity's small delegation had been assigned since joining the council 50 years ago. She was a small woman with short black hair and calm eyes. She wore the simple gray uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Around her, representatives from dozens of species whispered to each other in worried voices. The translator device in her ear turned their alien languages into words she could understand, but she did not need translation to recognize panic. At the center of the chamber, standing on the speaker's platform, was Ambassador Grell of the Helix Confederacy. He was a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms, and right now, those arms were shaking. His voice cracked as he spoke to the assembled council. 3 worlds, Grell said. 3 worlds in 6 days. 40 billion of my people. Gone. Consumed. The Void Swarm did not negotiate. They did not demand surrender. They simply arrived and began eating everything. Our ships, our cities, our people. Everything. The chamber was silent except for Grell's broken voice. We have sent our entire military fleet against them. We have used every weapon we possess. Nothing works. They adapt to our attacks within minutes. They learn our strategies faster than we can create new ones. And they are moving toward our homeworld. Grell looked around the chamber with desperate eyes. I am here to beg for help. The Helix Confederacy formally requests military intervention from the Galactic Council. This was the moment Yuna had been waiting for. She leaned forward in her seat and watched carefully. The first to respond was High Commander Vorn of the Kreth Empire. The Kreth were reptilian beings covered in green scales, known throughout the galaxy for their massive military. Vorn stood slowly, his golden armor catching the light. The Kreth Empire offers its deepest sympathy to the Helix Confederacy, Vorn said. His voice was smooth and practiced. However, the Void Swarm represents a threat of unknown magnitude. We cannot risk our forces against an enemy we do not understand. The Empire will strengthen its borders, but cannot commit to offensive action. Yuna watched Grell's face fall. Next came Counselor Bryn of the Luminari Collective. The Luminari were beings of living light, beautiful and ancient, known for their wisdom and their powerful energy weapons. Bryn floated above her seat, glowing softly blue. The collective shares the Confederacy's grief, Bryn said. But our resources are limited. We have our own borders to protect, our own people to defend. We cannot send our ships to fight a battle that may already be lost. We recommend evacuation of remaining Helix worlds. Grell's 4 hands closed into fists. One by one, the major powers of the galaxy gave their answers. The Obsidian Pact abstained without comment. The Merchants Guild cited economic concerns. The Frontier Alliance claimed insufficient forces. 12 species spoke, and 12 species said no. Yuna felt something cold settle in her stomach. She had known this would happen. Humanity had been watching the galactic powers for 200 years, ever since they first achieved faster-than-light travel. They had seen how things worked. Everyone talked about unity and cooperation, but when real danger came, everyone protected only themselves. Ambassador Grell stood alone on the platform, his head hanging low. So this is the Great Galactic Council, he said quietly. 12,000 years of civilization, and when one of us faces extinction, we stand alone. He turned to leave the platform. Yuna's hand moved to her console before she fully decided to act. She pressed the button that requested speaking time. A soft chime filled the chamber. Everyone turned to look at the back row, at the small human woman who had never spoken in a council session before. Council President Mox, an ancient being with gray skin and wise eyes, nodded to her. The council recognizes the representative from Earth. Yuna stood. She felt every eye in the chamber focus on her. Thousands of beings from dozens of species. All of them older and more powerful than humanity. All of them watching the young species that had barely learned to fly between stars. She walked down the long aisle toward the speaker's platform. Her footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. When she reached the platform, she stood next to Grell and looked out at the assembled council. "My name is Yuna," she said. Her voice was quiet but clear. "I speak for the United Earth Government." She paused and looked at the Kreth delegation, at the Luminari, at all the great powers who had said no. Humanity has listened to the Helix Confederacy's request. We have heard the responses of our fellow council members. We understand that the Void Swarm is dangerous. We understand that fighting them may be costly. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Humanity has decided that we will not let the Helix Confederacy stand alone. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd. Yuna raised her chin slightly. "If no one else will act, then Earth will act. We will send our forces to defend Helix Prime. We will fight the Void Swarm." She turned to look directly at High Commander Vorn of the Kreth Empire. "Humanity will handle it." The whispers stopped. The chamber became so quiet that Yuna could hear her own heartbeat. Ambassador Grell stared at her with wide, unbelieving eyes. You would do this? Your species is so young. Your fleet is so small." Yuna smiled at him. It was a gentle smile, but there was something behind it that made several nearby delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Our fleet is sufficient," she said simply. She turned and walked back to her seat. Behind her, the chamber remained frozen in shocked silence. In the observation gallery above, the Kreth intelligence officers were already sending urgent messages to their homeworld. Something had just changed. None of them understood what yet, but they all felt it. The young species had just made a promise, and somehow that promise felt more dangerous than the Void Swarm itself. The message reached the Kreth Imperial Palace 17 minutes after Ambassador Yuna finished speaking. Intelligence Director Dowan was eating his evening meal when his personal communicator began screaming with the highest priority alert. He read the message 3 times. Then he pushed his food away and started running. The Emperor's war room was deep beneath the palace, protected by 300 meters of solid rock and the most advanced shields in the Empire. Dohan arrived to find the room already filling with generals and admirals, all of them looking confused and worried. Emperor Cross sat on his throne at the head of the long table. He was old for a Kreth. His scales faded to pale green, but his eyes were still sharp. "Explain," the Emperor said. Dohan took his place at the intelligence station and pulled up the recording from the council chamber. Everyone watched in silence as the small human woman made her announcement. "Humanity will handle it." The recording ended. The room remained silent. "I do not understand," General Voss said slowly. "The humans have only 19 colony worlds. Their registered fleet is less than 200 ships. The Void Swarm has already destroyed the Helix military, and the Helix had 800 warships. What can the humans possibly do?" Dohan had been asking himself the same question. He pulled up everything the Empire knew about humanity. "This is the problem," he said. "We know almost nothing. Humans have been spacefaring for only 200 cycles. They have fought no interstellar wars. They have no enemies and few allies. They trade quietly, expand slowly, and never cause trouble." "Then they are fools," Admiral Thresh said. "They are committing suicide to look brave." Perhaps, Dohan said, but something bothered him. He had watched the recording of Ambassador Yuna 7 times now. Her voice had been calm. Her hands had not shaken. She had not looked like someone making a desperate bluff. She had looked like someone who knew exactly what she was doing. "Show me their industrial data," Emperor Cross commanded. Dohan pulled up the economic reports. The numbers appeared on the main screen, and slowly, the room fell silent again. 19 worlds, but the industrial output from those 19 worlds was enormous. The humans built ships faster than species with 10 times their territory. They mined asteroids with frightening efficiency. They consumed resources at rates that made no sense for a species with such a small population. "Where is it all going?" General Voss asked quietly. No one had an answer. Emperor Cross stood slowly from his throne. "Raise our defense condition to level 2. I want every ship we have ready to move, and I want real intelligence on the humans. Not trade data, not diplomatic reports. I want to know what they are hiding." Far across the galaxy, the Luminary Collective was having a similar meeting. Counselor Suji stood before the Elder Light, the 7 ancient Luminari who had guided their species for 3,000 years. The elders floated in a circle of pure white light, their forms almost too bright to look at directly. "The humans have made a declaration," Suji reported. "They claim they will defeat the Void Swarm alone." "The humans are children," Elder Noon said. His voice resonated with power. "They have existed for barely a moment of galactic history. They cannot possibly defeat the swarm." "With respect, Elder, I am not certain of that." The elders turned their attention to Suji. Their combined gaze was like standing in front of a star. "Explain your doubt," Elder Dawn commanded. Suji organized her thoughts carefully. "When we declined to help the Helix Confederacy, we did so because we believed the Void Swarm was unstoppable. We had analyzed their technology, their numbers, their behavior. Our best military minds concluded that no force in this galaxy could defeat them." She paused. "The humans heard the same information we did. They know everything we know about the swarm, and yet their ambassador showed no fear, no hesitation. She volunteered her species for a war that we believed was unwinnable." "Foolish bravery," Elder Knight said dismissively. "Perhaps, or perhaps they know something we do not." The elders considered this in silence. "What do you recommend?" Elder Dawn asked. "I recommend we reposition our border fleets. If the humans somehow succeed, we should be prepared. And if they fail," Suji hesitated, "if they fail, and the swarm continues to spread, we will need every ship we have." In the dark space of the Obsidian Pact's territory, Fleet Marshal Taiwan received his own reports. The Pact was a military alliance of 12 species, all of them warriors, all of them suspicious of outsiders. They had built their civilization on strength and preparation. They trusted no one. Taiwan sat alone in his command center, reading the intelligence reports on humanity. Unlike the Kreth or the Luminari, the Pact had been watching the humans closely for decades. Something about the young species had always made Taiwan nervous. Now he understood why. The humans were too quiet, too peaceful, too cooperative. In a galaxy full of conflict and competition, they never fought. They never threatened. They never demanded. It was unnatural. Taiwan had served in 6 wars. He had fought against the Kreth, against the Frontier Alliance, against pirates and rebels, and every kind of enemy. He had learned to recognize danger, and everything about humanity screamed danger to him. A species that never showed aggression was either weak or waiting. Looking at their industrial numbers, he knew they were not weak. He opened a communication channel to the Pact's Grand Council. "I am ordering a full military audit of all human-controlled space," he announced. "I want to know the location of every human ship, every station, every facility, and I want it done quietly. The council members looked surprised. "You believe the humans are a threat?" Admiral Cho asked. Taewon thought about Ambassador Yuna's calm smile. He thought about 200 years of quiet preparation. He thought about a species that had never shown its teeth. "I believe," he said slowly, "that we are about to see what the humans have been building while we were not paying attention. And I believe that whatever it is, it will change everything." Across the galaxy, in dozens of capitals and command centers, military leaders were coming to the same conclusion. The humans had made a simple statement. Just 5 words. Humanity will handle it. And somehow, those 5 words were more frightening than the void swarm itself. In her quarters on the diplomatic station, Ambassador Yuna received a message from Earth. She read it and smiled. "They are scared," she said softly to herself. "Good. Fear is the beginning of wisdom." She began preparing her next report. The plan was proceeding exactly as intended. The HSS Persistence was officially listed as a mining coordination station in an unremarkable asteroid belt. It orbited a small yellow star that had no name, only a number in Earth's star catalog. No trade routes passed through this system. No colonies existed within 50 light-years. This was not an accident. Admiral Ji-woo stood on the command deck of the Persistence, looking out through the massive windows at the field of asteroids floating in the darkness. She was 53 years old, with gray streaks in her black hair, and the calm face of someone who had spent 30 years preparing for a moment that might never come. The moment had come. Her aide, Commander Hanul, approached with a tablet in his hands. He was young, only 28, but he had been chosen for this position because he could keep secrets better than anyone in the fleet. "The authorization has arrived from Earth Command." His voice was steady, but his eyes showed excitement. "Code phrase confirmed. Fine, I'll handle it." Ji-woo nodded slowly. She had waited 15 years to hear those words. "Signal all contingency fleets," she ordered. "Full activation. Authorization Omega." Hainul's fingers moved across his tablet. Then he stopped and looked up at her. "Ma'am, that's all 17 fleets?" "All 17. We have never activated more than 3 at once, even during the exercises." Ji-woo turned to face him. Her expression was serious, but not unkind. "Commander, do you understand why humanity has never fought an interstellar war?" Hainul considered the question. "Because we avoided conflicts. Because we were too young and weak." "No," Ji-woo shook her head. "We avoided conflicts because we were preparing. Every treaty we signed, every insult we ignored, every time we stepped back from a fight, it was for this. 200 years of watching and learning and building, while the great powers wasted their strength fighting each other over rocks and pride, we built." She gestured toward the windows, toward the seemingly empty asteroid field. "Activate the displays." Hanul touched his tablet. Outside the windows, the asteroids began to shimmer and dissolve. The holographic camouflage that had hidden them for decades faded away, revealing what lay beneath. Ships. Hundreds of ships. Cruisers and destroyers and carriers, all painted in flat black, all bearing no markings of any kind. They hung in the darkness like sleeping predators, waiting to wake. "This is Contingency Fleet 7, Ji-woo said quietly. "One of 17. Each fleet contains between 150 and 300 vessels. We have been building them in secret since before I was born. Since before my parents were born." Hanul stared at the hidden fleet, with wide eyes. "How is this possible?" "The resources alone. The galaxy sees our 19 colony worlds and thinks that is all we have. They do not see the mining stations in the deep dark. They do not see the shipyards hidden in nebulae. They do not see the factory complexes built inside hollowed asteroids. Jiwoo smiled slightly. Humanity learned a long time ago that the universe is dangerous. We learned that survival requires preparation. And we learned that the best weapon is the one your enemy does not know exists. Across human space, in 17 different star systems, the same scene was playing out. Hidden fleets were emerging from their concealment. Ships that had never appeared on any registry were powering up their engines for the first time in years. In the Sigma Nebula, Chief Engineer Minji stood on the bridge of the carrier Sol's Promise and watched the rest of her fleet come alive. Minji was 31 years old and had spent her entire adult life maintaining ships that she had never expected to actually fly. Now warning lights were turning green across her console, and engines that had been silent for decades were beginning to hum. All systems nominal, her assistant reported. Weapon systems charging. Shield generators online. Minji nodded, but her attention was on the other ships emerging from the nebula's concealing gases. Destroyers, cruisers, support vessels, and behind them, the massive shapes of the dreadnoughts. Each one larger than any ship the galaxy had ever seen. They are going to lose their minds when they see this, she murmured. On the Persistence, Admiral Jiwoo received reports from all 17 fleets. 3,000 ships in total, crewed by personnel who had trained in secret for this day, armed with weapons that the galactic community believed were impossible. Fleet assembly will be complete in 6 hours, Commander Haniel reported. All units are proceeding to the rendezvous point. Good. And the special packages? Haniel checked his tablet. Project Kindness is loaded on all flagship vessels. Project Grandfather is active and coordinating battle calculations. Project Last Resort is secured aboard the Dreadnought Unity. Jiwoo nodded. These were humanity's secret weapons. Grandfather was the most advanced artificial intelligence ever created, capable of analyzing enemy behavior and predicting their movements with terrifying accuracy. Kindness was a viral signal designed to turn the swarm's hive mind against itself. And Last Resort, she hoped they would not need Last Resort. The Helix Confederacy has detected our fleet movements, Haniel continued. Ambassador Grell is requesting communication. Put him through. The view screen lit up with the image of the Helix ambassador. His blue face showed confusion and something that might have been hope. Admiral Jiwoo, Grell said, our sensors are detecting thousands of ships approaching our space. Human ships, ships that should not exist. Jiwoo allowed herself a small smile. They exist, Ambassador. They have always existed. You simply were not meant to see them until now. But how? Your species is so young. You have no military tradition. You have never fought a war. We have never needed to fight a war, Ambassador. There is a difference. Grell was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. You are truly coming to help us. We are coming to do more than help, Ambassador. We are coming to show the galaxy what happens when humanity stops being polite. Jiwoo straightened in her command chair. Tell your people to hold on. Tell them that help is coming. And tell them that when this is over, the Void Swarm will be nothing but a memory. She nodded to Haniel, who cut the communication. Outside the windows of the Persistence, the Black Fleet was gathering. 3,000 ships, each one a monument to human patience and preparation. Each one carrying weapons designed to fight nightmares. Admiral Jiwoo looked at the assembled force and felt pride swelling in her chest. This was what humanity could do. This was what they had always been capable of. Now the galaxy would see. Set course for Helix Prime, she commanded. Maximum speed. The Black Fleet began to move, and the stars themselves seemed to tremble. The Void Swarm had been consuming life across the universe for longer than most civilizations had existed. They had emerged from the dark space between galaxies, where light never reached and nothing was supposed to live. No one knew where they came from. No one knew why they existed. They simply arrived, consumed everything, and moved on. Each swarm creature was a perfect killing machine, part biological, part mechanical. They could survive in the vacuum of space and the depths of oceans. They could eat metal and rock and flesh with equal ease. They learned from their enemies, adapting to new weapons within minutes, developing counters to new strategies within hours. 11 civilizations had fallen to them before they entered this galaxy. 11 species had fought with everything they had, and 11 species had been erased from existence. The swarm did not communicate. They did not feel mercy or fear. They had never encountered humanity. Captain Unji stood on the bridge of the destroyer Defiance, watching the tactical display as the human fleet approached Helix Prime. She was 34 years old and had spent 12 years training for this battle in simulation rooms deep beneath Earth's surface. Now, the simulations were over. Swarm contacts appearing on long-range sensors, her tactical officer reported. Count is, ma'am, the count is still rising. Unji watched the numbers climb. 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. The display filled with red dots representing swarm creatures, a cloud of death surrounding Helix Prime like a shell. Total count, approximately 800,000 individual swarm units, the tactical officer said. His voice was remarkably steady. Plus 17 hive ships coordinating their behavior. The Helix military had possessed 800 ships. They had been destroyed in hours. Grandfather, Unji said, addressing the artificial intelligence that connected all human ships. Analysis? The AI's voice filled the bridge, calm and precise. The swarm operates on predictable algorithmic responses. Their hive mind structure creates efficiency, but also vulnerability. I have identified 847 exploitable inefficiencies in their coordination network. Unji smiled. This was what made Grandfather special. While other species saw the swarm as an unstoppable force of nature, Grandfather saw patterns, weaknesses, opportunities. Share tactical data with all fleet vessels, she ordered. Prepare for engagement. Across the Black Fleet, 3,000 ships received their battle instructions. Each captain saw the same tactical overlay, the same identification of weak points, the same coordinated attack plan. But unlike the rigid formations of other species, the human fleet was designed for flexibility. Each ship was an independent unit, capable of adapting to changing circumstances, connected to the whole through Grandfather's quantum link communication. Admiral Jiwoo's voice came through the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Admiral Jiwoo. Today we show the galaxy who we are. Not conquerors, not aggressors, defenders, protectors. Today we prove that when the darkness comes, humanity will be the light that pushes it back. She paused. Engage at will. The Black Fleet surged forward. The first thing the swarm noticed was that these new enemies did not behave like any species they had consumed before. Other fleets formed defensive lines, predictable patterns that the swarm could analyze and overwhelm. The humans formed no lines. They flowed like water, shifting and changing, never staying in one formation for more than seconds. The second thing the swarm noticed was the weapons. The destroyer Defiance fired its primary weapon, and a beam of twisted gravity struck a cluster of swarm creatures. The gravitational forces pulled them apart at the molecular level, scattering their remains across space. Gravity lances. The galactic scientific community had declared them impossible. The humans had built them anyway. The carrier Soul's Promise launched its fighters, small craft that moved faster than anything the swarm had seen. Each fighter carried antimatter charges, tiny packages of pure destruction that detonated inside swarm creatures and turned them into expanding clouds of energy. And then there was kindness. Chief Engineer Minji watched from her station as the Soul's Promise broadcast the kindness signal. It was a viral code, designed by humanity's best programmers and refined over decades of simulation. It spoke to the swarm's hive mind in its own language, but it said the wrong things. It told swarm creatures that their allies were enemies. It told coordination nodes to give contradictory orders. It turned the swarm's greatest strength into its greatest weakness. Across the battlefield, swarm creatures began attacking each other. On the surface of Helix Prime, the surviving colonists watched through telescopes and sensor arrays. They saw the impossible. They saw the endless swarm faltering, confused, turning on itself. They saw human ships dancing through the chaos, striking precisely at the most vulnerable points, disappearing before the swarm could respond. The battle was not easy. Human ships were destroyed. Human lives were lost. The swarm was still vast and powerful, and even confused, it was deadly. Captain Unji watched 3 ships from her squadron vanish in balls of fire. She felt the losses like physical wounds. But the humans did not stop. They did not retreat. They adapted and continued, just as grandfather had taught them. 6 hours into the battle, the first hive ship fell. It was a massive creature, 10 kilometers long, the coordination center for hundreds of thousands of swarm units. When the dreadnought Unity hit it with a concentrated antimatter barrage, the explosion was visible from Helix Prime's surface. The swarm units connected to that hive ship went instantly silent. One by one, the hive ships fell. Without their coordination, the swarm became less dangerous. The humans pressed their advantage, pushing deeper into the swarm's formation, targeting the remaining hive ships with ruthless efficiency. 9 hours after the battle began, the last hive ship died. The remaining swarm creatures, cut off from the hive mind, became simple animals. Dangerous, yes, but no longer a coordinated threat. The human fleet hunted them down systematically, clearing the space around Helix Prime until the sensors showed nothing but debris and silence. Admiral Jiwoo stood on the bridge of the Persistence and looked at the tactical display. Where 800,000 enemies had been, there was now nothing. Confirmed, Commander Haniel said quietly. The void swarm at Helix Prime has been completely destroyed. Jiwoo let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Casualties? 112 ships lost, approximately 4,000 personnel. They died bravely, Admiral. Jiwoo nodded. 4,000 lives, 4,000 families who would receive terrible news. It was a victory, but it came with a price. Begin recovery operations, she ordered, and open a channel to Helix Prime. Moments later, Ambassador Grell's face appeared on the screen. Tears were running down his blue cheeks. You did it, he whispered. You actually did it. Admiral Jiwoo allowed herself a small, tired smile. We told you we would handle it, Ambassador. Humanity keeps its promises. On the surface of Helix Prime, the survivors began to emerge from their shelters. They looked up at the sky, where human ships were now patrolling peacefully, and they wept with relief. The void swarm, the nightmare that had seemed unstoppable, was gone. And across the galaxy, every government, every military command, every intelligence agency was receiving the same reports. The humans, the young species that everyone had ignored, had done the impossible. Nothing would ever be the same. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so full. Every species had sent their highest representatives. Emperors and presidents and elder councils had traveled personally to hear what the humans would say. The observation galleries were packed with journalists and diplomats and military observers. The entire galaxy was watching. Ambassador Yuna walked to the speaker's platform alone. She wore the same simple gray uniform she had worn 3 days ago, when she had made her promise. She looked exactly the same, calm, quiet, unremarkable. But now every eye in the chamber followed her with a mixture of fear and wonder. She stood at the podium and waited for silence. It came quickly. Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, Yuna began. I am pleased to report that the Void Swarm threat has been neutralized. Helix Prime and the remaining Helix colony worlds are secure. Humanity considers this matter resolved. The words hung in the air. Ordinary words, and yet they seemed to echo with impossible weight. No one spoke. No one moved. Finally, Emperor Cross of the Kreth Empire rose slowly from his seat. He was the most powerful ruler in the galaxy, commander of the largest military, leader of an empire that had existed for 8,000 years. But when he spoke, his voice was uncertain. Ambassador, the reports we have received describe your fleet. 3,000 warships, weapons that our scientists cannot explain, artificial intelligence coordinating battle strategies. None of this was known to us. None of this appeared in any of our intelligence reports. Yuna nodded politely. That is correct, Emperor. How is this possible? Your species has been spacefaring for only 2 centuries. You have no military history. You have never fought a war. We have never needed to fight a war, Yuna said. The same words Admiral Jiwoo had spoken. There is a difference between being unable to fight and choosing not to fight. Counselor Suji of the Luminari Collective spoke next. Her light form flickered with uncertainty. You could have dominated this galaxy, she said quietly. With the forces you have revealed, you could have conquered any of us, all of us. Yuna tilted her head slightly. Yes, we could have. Then why did you not? Yuna considered the question carefully. The entire chamber held its breath, waiting for her answer. Because that was never the point, she said finally. Humanity does not want to rule. We do not dream of empire. We dream of something simpler and more difficult. We want to live. We want to raise our children in peace. We want to explore the stars without fear. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of species. And we want neighbors. We want to live in a galaxy where we are not alone, where there are other minds and other civilizations to learn from and share with. That is why we came to this council 50 years ago. That is why we have been patient and peaceful, even when patience and peace were hard. She paused. We hoped someone else would step up. When the Helix Confederacy begged for help, we hoped that one of you, any of you, would do what needed to be done. We always hope someone else will step up. Her voice hardened slightly. But no one did, so we did it ourselves. Because if we want the neighbors we dream of, sometimes we have to protect them. Fleet Marshal Taewon of the Obsidian Pact leaned forward. His scarred face was thoughtful. And when no one steps up, what then? Yuna met his gaze directly. Then humanity handles it, whatever it takes, because the alternative is watching the galaxy burn and doing nothing. She smiled, and somehow that smile was more unsettling than any threat. We have been watching you all for 200 years. We have seen your wars and your jealousies and your fears. We have seen how you abandon each other when danger comes. And we have decided that if the galaxy is going to survive, someone needs to be ready to do what others will not. That is a heavy burden to carry alone, Emperor Cross said slowly. Yes, Yuna agreed, it is, which is why we hope you will learn from this. She let the words settle before continuing. The Void Swarm is destroyed, but the space between galaxies is vast, and the swarm did not appear from nothing. There are other threats out there, threats we cannot imagine. When they come, will you hide behind your borders again, or will you stand together? No one answered, but Yuna saw something in their eyes. Shame, perhaps. Or maybe the beginning of understanding. Humanity will not always be able to handle it alone, she said softly. Next time we may need help. And when that day comes, I hope we will not be disappointed. She stepped back from the podium. Thank you for your attention. Humanity considers this matter closed. She walked back to her seat in the back row, as if she had not just changed the political landscape of the entire galaxy. 6 months later, on the HSS Persistence, Admiral Jiwoo met with Intelligence Commander Boyoung. "The reports are all the same," Boyoung said, spreading data files across the conference table. "Every major power is upgrading their military. The Kreth have tripled their shipyard production. The Luminari are developing new weapon systems. Even the Obsidian Pact is recruiting and training at unprecedented rates." Jiwoo nodded, studying the reports. "And their attitude toward us?" "Cautious, respectful. Some are clearly frightened. Others seem to be preparing for possible conflict." "They are preparing," Jiwoo agreed, "but not for conflict with us. At least, not the smart ones." Boyoung frowned. "Then what are they preparing for?" Jiwoo pulled up a different display. It showed a star map of the galaxy, with special attention to the dark space between galactic arms. Red dots blinked in the void, dozens of them, hundreds of them. "Our deep space sensors have detected movement in the intergalactic void," Jiwoo said quietly. The void swarm that attacked Helix Prime was not alone. There are more of them out there, many more, and they are moving in this direction. Boyoung stared at the display. His face went pale. "How many?" "We do not know yet, but based on the sensor readings, we estimate that the force at Helix Prime was approximately 1% of the total swarm population." They had barely survived 1%. "Admiral," Boyoung's voice was barely a whisper, "can we win against something like that?" Jiwoo was silent for a long moment. She thought about the 4,000 soldiers who had died at Helix Prime. She thought about the hidden shipyards that were already working at maximum capacity, building new ships to replace the ones lost. She thought about Project Last Resort, the weapon they had hoped to never use. Alone? Probably not. She smiled slightly. But we will not be alone. The other species are arming themselves. They are preparing. When the next threat comes, when we ask for help, they will remember what happened when humanity had to handle it alone. She straightened in her chair. They will remember, and they will join us, because now they understand something important. They understand that the galaxy is dangerous, that survival is not guaranteed, and that sometimes you have to fight for your neighbors even when it is hard. Boyoung nodded slowly. "You planned this, the whole thing. You planned for them to be scared." "We planned for them to wake up," Jiwoo corrected. "Fear was just the alarm clock." She turned back to the display, watching the distant red dots blink in the darkness. "Start Phase 2 preparations," she ordered. "Expand the shipyards, increase recruitment, and begin diplomatic outreach to every species that seems willing to listen." "What should I tell them?" Admiral Jiwoo smiled, and this time there was no threat in it. Only hope and determination, and the stubborn human refusal to give up. "Tell them that next time, we would appreciate the help. Tell them that humanity is tired of handling things alone. And tell them that together, we might just have a chance." Outside the windows of the Persistence, the stars burned cold and ancient. And somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, something vast and hungry was waking up. But humanity was ready, and this time, they would not face the darkness alone.